Brian Sims, my first question for you. In-N-Out or Five Guys?
I'm born and raised California. It's In-N-Out all day, every day.
This question is really California or not. I think that's the actual part behind that question.
Welcome to Season 2 of 10 Questions with 10 Pastors, brought to you by Gateway Seminary, with your host, Tyler Sanders. This episode was recorded live at the SBC in Anaheim.
This is the second season of 10 Questions with 10 Pastors. I'm Tyler Sanders, Director of Communications at Gateway Seminary, and I'm here with Brian Sims, who is Senior Pastor of CrossPointe Church in Fontana, California. Recent Gateway grad, got his MTS in 2021. My first real question for you is, would you just tell us how you met Jesus, how you became a Christian?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting. I was raised in a Catholic home, and we became, we rapidly, as I got older, we became more and more Easter and Mother's Day kind of Catholics. I got to a point in my life at probably about the age of 16 or 17, I realized like me showing up on those days and people have to stand up in the back because I came probably wasn't the best for me, and so I really kind of had backed away, and I felt like I knew everything there was to know about God. I could recite a Catholic Mass from memory, those kind of things. But I began to date a girl I'd known since elementary school, and I knew that she was going to this church. And so, because she was going to church, I thought maybe I should know something about this church. And it wasn't until an Easter Sunday, she, her mother told me that the pastor's son was asking about her that morning in church. And so I thought, I better get down there and make my presence known. And so I started going. I just started showing up, not during football season, because football season I worshiped at the temple of the NFL. But for her, I was like, I'm going to start coming. But as I was coming, I started listening and realizing that some of the things that I had been taught as a child, I was hearing, just a different truth now. And so I'm a reader. And so I actually went out and bought a King James Bible because I figured that's a Bible. So started kind of reading for myself, and over a period of about 6-7 months, as things became more serious with that girl, she's my wife now, and I realized that there's something in my heart that needs to change. Especially if, I felt like if we were going to be able to have a successful relationship and eventually a marriage. And so I began to question, what is it in my heart that needs to change? And, I had a pastor that was faithful to the gospel and explained it to me very well. And so it was July 3rd, 1994. Gave my life to Jesus and have never looked back, really. So.
You mentioned in there you're a reader.
Yes.
My next question is, what are you reading right now?
A couple of things right now. I'm reading The Unexpected Adventure by Lee Strobel and Mark Middleberg. Okay. They talked about it at the evangelism conference just a couple weeks ago. So I went on Amazon and was like, let me get that because it just sounded really interesting. I'm also reading American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I'm reading Barack Obama's latest book. I've been kind of working through that. Yeah, I've got like 4 or 5 books that I read at a time, chapter here, chapter there. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So let's get into some preaching questions here. So this is like big picture. How do you approach planning out a sermon series or themes in your sermons?
My go-to has been to preach through books of the Bible. That's kind of my wheelhouse. Is where I'm more comfortable, just kind of expositorily going through a book at a time. However, I'm starting to learn a little bit more about putting together some thematic series that still stick to expository preaching through the book. So I typically will try to plan in November. I'll try to plan out the next year as much as I can. Sometimes there are things that have come up just in the life of the church, and they need to be addressed kind of immediately. But for the most part, I'll try to plan out. I like to make sure that I hit a gospel, an epistle, and typically one of the prophets within a 1 year period. Sometimes it takes 18 months or so. I talk a lot, so it sometimes just takes a little longer.
That's the job.
Yeah. So, but I typically will look at kind of the history of where I've been. I mean, I've been pastoring almost 13 years now and preaching regularly throughout that. So I can kind of look back and see what we've covered, and I want to make sure that I'm getting the full scope of the Bible in that. So so I try to plan kind of according to that. But like I say, there are some special events or different things that will come up that I make sure I want to address them. My church has recently just finished a capital giving campaign. So going into that, I want to make sure that I'm preaching something that's going to lead us into a season of generosity and giving and those kind of things. So and then we have a couple of milestone things that happen every year. When it's December is our missions emphasis month, and so Lottie Moon offering, and so we typically try to preach more of a missions emphasis at that time. We have our church has adopted a people group in South Asia, and so we celebrate that anniversary every year, and we usually kind of preach some things that kind of go along with that around that time as well. So.
Yeah. Well, now let's look at it more in a micro is probably too strong a word, but the week-to-week level. What's your sermon prep like? Or what's your process like? That's a better way to put it.
Yeah. Typically, one of the reasons why I like preaching through a book at a time is I don't have to spend a whole lot of time to think about what the next passage I'll preach is. It's kind of, I spend the work up front to kind of outline and set up what I'm going to preach. So Mondays I typically will do all of the reading, the homework, and the commentary study and a lot of that, and just compile a lot of notes and things. Tuesdays, I really kind of begin to outline the sermon itself, and I start searching out illustrations and kind of get the bones of the whole thing, so I can get that to my staff, and they can kind of start preparing for the week. And then Wednesday, I'm in the office all day, and then Thursday is my writing day. Thursday, I'll sit down and I'll really begin to flesh out the thoughts and kind of start working through transitions and making things happen. Just getting that flow together. And then I'll just let it sit for Friday. I won't really even look at it. And then I'll typically come back, during my quiet time Saturday morning. Then I like to sit down and go through it again and just kind of see, because sometimes you just got to sleep on it. You sleep on it and God kind of begins to put some more thoughts in your heart, and you realize like, okay, maybe this didn't make sense, or maybe this would be better said this way. So Saturday is kind of a polished day, and then typically, if everything goes well, in a regular week, then I'm in the position where I can go to bed Saturday. I have no worries at all. But there, occasionally life happens and things happen, and sometimes you're there Saturday morning, like, okay, I got to get this put together. But I've gotten a lot better and have much better routines and time management. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. What would you say is the most difficult, either passage or topic you've preached on?
Oh boy. I think for me, maybe the most difficult was, coming back from COVID. We were shut down for a time, and when we decided to reopen, actually the week before we reopened, I made this. I preached a sermon about Um, you know, basically it was about political divisiveness in the church.
Yeah.
Because COVID just kind of exposed a lot of these things
Yeah.
in what was happening in the church, and so there was divisions there in my church that I didn't even know about. I know that there's some party line divides, but everybody always thinks that everybody else is just like them. And as we were preparing to reopen, dealing with mask mandates and are you vaccinated, are you not vaccinated, all of that stuff had really began to cause a rift, and so to just take an opportunity to say, hey, let's look at what the Bible says about these things, and there's no reason for us to try to add anything to Jesus for salvation, or for we have people in our church that would legitimately tell you that somebody who's a Democrat is going to hell. That's just where they're going, and so it was a hard thing for me, because it was almost like I have a friend who used the phrase taking somebody behind the shed and talking to him like a Dutch uncle. It's like, I don't know what that means, but it sounds harsh, and I was like, that's kind of just felt harsh, but I think it was necessary, and I think it had the desired result, but it was one of those where, you go home on Sunday afternoon and you just like, I got to go lay down in some quiet somewhere, because this was just rough.
Yeah. Now, with all your roles, responsibilities as a pastor, what do you think is a sweet spot for you? And maybe what's something that you're kind of, you're still working on?
I think for me, really, the sweet spot is when it comes to just dealing with people. I mean, it sounds weird to say I think I have some exceptional interpersonal skills, but I think God has kind of given me just a knack for that. I like spending time with people, which is weird. I'm an introvert, but I love to spend time with my people, and I love to be able to speak into their lives. And I'm not a trained counselor, but I do feel like I can give some biblical counsel in those times. And so that, for me, that's probably my sweet spot. I like to deal with people, and they say, pastoring would be easy if it wasn't for the people, but that's really where I feel like the work is. I tell people all the time, I'm in the people business, but the difficult part for me, I think, is maybe the administrative part, the business aspect of pastoring. I have had in the past, for the past 12 years, an executive pastor on my staff who handled a lot of that, which made things a lot easier for me. But he's recently retired, which, God bless him, he was ready. But now I'm realizing, like, okay, this is an area that I need to get better, in this administrative type area. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, there's church is not just about gathering people together. There's still some administrative things, and there's business of church that has to be done.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I'm working at, trying to get better at. So.
Yeah. Can you give me a swing and a miss you've made in ministry?
Oh man, I might be able to give you a swing and a miss just this past week. Gosh, we had planned. We had this great idea to do 5 Super Sundays to kick off the new year, right? So January, New Year's Day, and in the first 5 Sundays, we have 5 huge events. We'll use it to, bring people back to church after Christmas holiday, and I think it culminated on Super Bowl Sunday.
Right.
And so we had all these different events. We had, things we were raffling away stuff. We had brought in like Christian illusionists one Sunday.
Right.
We had all these big things. We did a an all church outing to like a local amusement park. And I think for 5 Sundays in a row, our attendance declined each week to where like we got to Super Bowl Sunday and it was like a lower attendance than any Sunday we had in the year prior. And so it was just kind of like all the super was just gone, you know.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that like Super Bowl Sunday, even for church folk, it's kind of like a holiday, you know. And so it just completely bombed and flopped, and it was like, okay, we gotta scrap the 5 Super Sundays, and we'll figure out how to do something else. But but that was definitely swing and a miss. Yeah.
Now you just recently graduated, and you also have several. You have a good history. Did you say you've been at your church 13 years? Is that right? You've been pastoring.
I've been the
13 years?
pastor for 13 years. Like I say, it's the same church that I got saved in '94. Yes.
Yeah. So you have a lot of ministry experience there for sure.
Yes.
So these next two questions are kind of related. What's something that you cannot learn in the seminary classroom? Something you got to learn in ministry.
Let's see. Well, stacking chairs obviously would be one like that.
We don't have that class
yeah,
yet.
that's
right,
not class yet. But one of the areas I think where I thought, man, I didn't learn this was how to navigate relationships and things within the church when you mess up. You know, that was one of the things that really kind of stood out to me, because in the early days, I think I did it wrong, you know, and I think I really hurt some people's feelings. But I guess to be fair, there have been some classes in seminary that have taught me, you know, spiritual formation,
Sure,
you know, about approaching my calling humbly and those kind of things. But as far as like in specific situations where I have messed up, and just how to navigate that relationship with people who may have lost some faith with you, or
right.
you know, there's some decisions that we make. We have to realize that, you know, we're not infallible. We're prone. You know, we can make mistakes. And just how to move through that and work through that and grow from it rather than have it divide you. Yeah.
Now, the opposite side of that is what's something you feel like every student, they have to learn in seminary? What's the one thing you shouldn't leave seminary without?
Pastorally, I think the one thing that was really a treasure to me in seminary was how to rightly handle the word. I think probably the most important classes to me in seminary were theology and preaching. You know, just the two go hand in hand for me. Like, I had to be able to know how to articulate my theology, and then taking what I know and being able to practically apply it to the people. If that was the only thing I learned in seminary, that would have been well worth it.
Yeah.
It would have been well worth it.
Well, for my final question, if you could go back and talk to yourself your first year as a senior pastor at your church, what advice do you think you would give young Brian Sims?
Probably a couple of things. One was actually advice that I did receive. Take your day off. You got to take your day off. You know, in the very beginning, I felt like I had to do everything. And I was going, 7 days a week, for months. And I had my pastor actually call me and said, "Look, man, I heard you're not taking your day off. And if you don't take a day off, I'm going to come and make you take a day off," And so that would be one. But then the other thing I would probably say is schedule your time well. Unscheduled time just goes away like it's in the wind, you know.
That's good.
And having to learn, like, have a schedule, have a calendar, and try as best you can. You know, the Holy Spirit will derail sometimes, but as best you can, try to schedule your time so you can be more effective with it. Because if not, I mean, there's a lot of ways now to waste time. I mean, it's so easy.
Yeah.
You know? So I try to be a good steward of my time, and that's something I didn't do in the early
I think it's
days.
something you have to fight for.
Really, you do.
It probably has always been true, but
Yeah.
there are so many ways you can waste it today.
Yeah.
It's really something you have to fight for.
Really.
Well, that's it. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Brian
awesome.
Sims.
That was
Really
easy.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you.